say, I told y'all to just tap in and say, I told y'all to stop working in my last video, and y'all looked at me like I was crazy. So let's take this from a different angle, shall we? The United States of America and its imaginary friend have quite literally made a mockery out of the International Criminal Court and international law. The United States of America is literally destroying the credibility and the validity of the very same organizations that were put in place to uphold the false moral superiority for the West. Organizations like USAID, the ICC, the UN, they're there to help the US maintain its soft power. Because let's be so real, America only has friends because she's pointing guns at everybody, and you literally have to kiss her ass in order to get her to share some with you. What kind of friend is that? And our allies are starting to take notice, okay? Because America is funding and participating in the first ever live stream genocide that never ended, by the way, just moved to the West Bank. America has effectively abandoned Ukraine after they bombed the Nord Stream pipeline that was bringing energy from Russia to Europe, and after they propped Ukraine up to fight this unwinnable war. After ruining peace talk negotiations, by the way. Now America is burning bridges with our neighbors to the north and the south, okay? And big side note on that, America's power grid, super weak. Sister is weak as fuck, okay? And if Canada decides to cut energy off to us, we're cooked, baby. Stick a fork in us. The empire is done. And let us not forget that the petrodollar is being downgraded right now. And the possibility for a multipolar world is becoming more and more of a reality. I guess I'm saying all this to say the only people that are carrying out business as usual are the people within our borders that have been conditioned to fear short-term material consequences because they checked out of the American game. Everybody else outside of our borders are either protesting against us being murdered or displaced by our tax dollars, or they're trying to figure out how they're going to get out of our toxic economic relationship. So it might sound like fluffy bullshit right now, but in a country where mistrust, paranoia, and individualism is an all-time high, we quite literally need each other, okay? Because as this empire falls, and she is falling, the only thing that will save us is a culture of care, inclusivity, and empathy. If you made it this far into the video, go ahead and comment a cloud emoji. I love you guys so much. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome
Yeah,
to
she is pretty
episode
great, isn't
4.
she? Yeah, we've
Yeah,
got to
she
get her
amazing.
on the show, dude. I don't know how we can get her on board, but
Yeah,
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 she would just add so much.
yeah, yeah. I got direct contact with Afeni, so I'm an axer,
Right.
um,
Yeah, I do
so
apologize for the ball lightning above my head here. I got a new lamp that
yes,
is providing some awesome light, but it's kind of reflecting off of my green screen. Uh,
good man.
yes, I have no
Um,
idea how to fix that, so I'll tweak it and figure out what's going
yeah,
on there. But yeah, we've got some stuff to talk about.
yeah.
Our,
Hey,
our, uh, our acting dictator, uh, like our actual dictator, as opposed to the one we actually elected, supposedly
yeah,
last November, but like the guy who's actually running the show, doesn't
yeah.
actually understand how the United States federal government works or how the Constitution works.
Oh boy, yeah. Um, yeah, that's true. Man, I got a lot to say about him, but um, let me ask you a question before we get to all that. What do you think of the American Communist Party?
Bunch of fascist grifters. They're pretenders trying to drive people
Okay.
over to the extreme right through MAGA. Uh, Haxon Stinkle uh, is one of the lead people behind it. He's some rich boy
Oh
who
God.
decided to pretend to be a leftist, but he supports Trump. He supports Israel, although right now he's kind of cosplaying, being on the side of Palestine. But he's basically, in the doorknob orbit,
Oh yeah.
along with people like
Makes it.
Glenn Greenfield, Kim Liverson, Nico Mouse, COVID Couch, Max Blue Menthol. All that crowd is just Caleb Maupin,
Well, scriptures, man.
who's a serial creep, and then there's Nick Brana over at the Movement for a People's Party. He's got some really shady stuff going on there, and also is credibly accused of sexual assault. So, not a lot of good people within that orbit of the YouTubeosphere. But Stinkle was trying out this cockamamie bullshit of trying to unite MAGA with communists with the idea that somehow it would bring Trump supporters over to become communists. It's like, no, they hate communists. What the fuck are you talking about? But then you look at the people he has on, and then all the shit that they're affiliated with. It's pretty obvious that if these people are not feds, and then they're the most easily duped morons on the face of the planet.
Exactly. Yeah, because our friend of the network, Ty Pleasant, was talking about them. I think Nick Cruz had one of the people from the ACP on his show on RBN, and
it sparked a lot of backlash. And Nick, of course, being Nick, decides, okay, I'm just going to shit all over everyone who's shitting all over me, which
of course.
I tried to point out, Nick, the reason people are voicing concerns is because, even if you're confrontational with them, you can still expose these guys without giving them a platform to spew their bullshit. Because the way these guys operate, they're part of that whole debate bureau culture where their tactic is talking over and interrupting you to the point you can't get a word in edgewise, and that's how they pretend to dominate the discussion. I actually had that a while back with someone who's like a Vosh wannabe, and I pretty much took him to school mostly, although I did flub a little bit on 1980s crime statistics. But Joe Biden built his early political career on locking up black people. So, these guys really, if they cannot dominate the discussion, they fold like cheap lawn chairs. This guy tried interrupting and talking over me. I just muted him and said, look, you're not talking over me. Not on my show. If you're on your show, then, that's one thing. But if you're on my show, forget about it.
Yeah. So, me and Tim are thinking about bringing one of those ACP members on to Tea Time. Well, I want you to join us because I think I need a little bit of backup, in terms of because I know these motherfuckers.
These clown shoes really need to be taken to school. But I just pointed out to Nick. A lot of people, see the futility in giving these guys a platform where it's like, okay, fine, but it's like Jimmy Doorknob just had Steve Bannon on and basically verbally filleted him and didn't push back at least once. You never see him be that deferential towards Joe Stein or Cornel West or Brianna Joy Gray.
Right. Yeah, I noticed
Steve
that.
Bannon or RFK Jr., you'll give the kid glove treatment because he is not interested in having an honest discussion. He just wants to give right-wingers a platform to spew their bullshit and then not do any pushback. So I was pointing out to Nick, look, this is what people are trying to tell you. And he's like, but none of you get to dictate to me, who I get to have on. And I'm saying, look, I'm not dictating anything. I'm not your parent. All right. I have no authority to tell you what to do. I'm just pointing out what people are saying, take it or leave it. It's like with the run up to the Rage Against the War Machine debacle. I was trying to warn people, look, this is going to be a waste of time. I just don't see any point in participating in it. And I turned out to be right because it was just a bunch of warmongers and bigots who basically dominated the discussion. And, Chris Hedges basically cucked himself to these people. And, he's talking about, how we can't stop fighting back against these guys. It's like, dude, you're trying to make nice with MAGA communists. Okay, just enough. All right, you
Yeah,
lost credibility.
yeah, yeah. So many people lost credibility that day. You were right about the Rage Against the War Machine too. I heard. I think I followed you then. When
Yeah,
you was
yeah.
talking about it at first.
Once I realized who was behind it, I was like, no, this is going to be a complete wash.
Yeah, yeah,
Movement
it
for People's
was.
Party, Doorknob, and also they had like Tulsi Gabbard, who's like a major
Yeah,
warmonger. Uh,
yeah,
people who were against the war in Ukraine, but who can't wait to go to war against China or against
yeah,
the Palestinians, as the case with RFK Jr. and Gabbard. So
yeah,
it's not a real anti-war rally. So it ended up
yeah,
being a complete waste of time and basically an excuse to funnel money through the Libertarian Party, which is
yeah.
also involved in it.
Yeah, when I found that out, like, yeah, this is full of shit. Like, yeah. Um, One last question, then you get to your topics. What did you talk about forced to vote at the time? I thought it was a good idea.
Yeah, it
Like,
was a good
nobody.
idea. I think part of what made it suffer was being affiliated with Doorknob, who actually didn't even originate the idea.
Yeah,
He just kind of
DSA.
latched onto it, but out of opportunity. But it was
Yeah,
a good idea. I mean, if it's politics 101, okay? When you remember when the Republicans took over the House of Representatives. I think this was like what 2020, I think it was, or maybe 2022.
2022,
Yeah, Kevin
2022.
McCarthy.
Yeah,
Yeah, uh, yeah, Kevin McCarthy was trying to get in on the first vote and couldn't do it because his party was like, no, 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 no. We're not voting for you right away. You've got to give us some concessions in return.
right.
And then the Democrats use this to kind of point to the Republicans to say, look how chaotic they are. They're not united like we are. It's like, you fucking morons. You feculent imbeciles. This is the Republican Party doing
Why?
exactly what you're supposed to be doing, which is holding their own accountable and getting concessions in return for making demands or making
Yeah,
demands in return for concessions. All right. Uh,
yeah,
this is what politics involves. Okay, it is not some unity party where like everyone finds a way to get along and pass the same depraved far right policies. No, if you want something, you have to fight for it, even if it means going against your own party's leadership.
exactly. But
This is
but let me see.
basic civics.
I thought that the squad was supposed to do it. Remember, they're supposed to go in there. They're supposed to be the left Tea Party according to Cal Kalinske. But
Yeah,
they
but
supposed to be like lone shares.
unfortunately, 2 years getting their asses handed to them by Pelosi and the rest of the Democrat
Yeah,
Party leadership kind of broke them. AOC just completely lost her focus, and I think what happened was the DSA, like Democratic Socialists of America, uh, with involvement from Kyle Kuklinski and Chunk Yogurt over at TYT. That they were pushing these candidates on us, thinking, okay, we're the only way we're going to reform the Democrats is by electing progressives. It's like, no, 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 dude. You have no outside force to apply pressure that makes it. See, if you actually study history, Malcolm X uh, gave a speech called "The Ballot or the Bullet,"
hmm
where if you break down the speech to its essentials, you either give us the vote or we're going to take up the gun.
yeah. Yeah.
All right, and even when he met
I'm
with
studying it.
Martin Luther King Jr. For those few minutes prior to Malcolm X's assassination, Mr. X told Dr. King, look, I'm the guy being the outspoken, radical, scary black guy, so that they take you more seriously, so that you're more palatable to the white establishment.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So you've got to be that radical outside force that puts the fear into the establishment and makes them want to give concessions to your so-called moderates. If you don't have that outside galvanizing force, you have no leverage within the party. You're going to get gobbled up and shoot up and spat out, or shat out.
Exactly.
Actually, if you
Shout out,
decide,
yeah.
yeah. So that's what happened to AOC. She got assimilated into the Borg collective, and you know, Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and the others, they really were not united at all.
He would. Yeah.
So
Corey
they
Bush.
maintained. Yeah, Cory Bush got voted out. I think Jamal
Yeah.
Bowman didn't he get voted out too?
Yeah. Them
Yeah.
two did.
So they got replaced by Zionist pro-genocide candidates, whom the Democrats couldn't wait to embrace. If you look at the way the primaries were set up, those were they would rather primary their own to ensure that a leftist candidate does not go on to the general election and lose that seat to the Republicans and actually allow that to happen. So, it was a complete farce, but the Republicans know how to get what they want, and they know how to extract concessions. Okay. As evil and degenerate as the Republicans are, they understand how government works on some level, and they understand how to get what they want. The Democrats, they've made a career out of the last half century of bending over backwards to placate the Republicans, and they never get anything in return.
Exactly. I think they don't want to fight. I think they just
No, they
go
don't.
along, get along, man.
That there is no
They don't fight.
ideological difference between Republicans and Democrats. They pretend to. Yeah, if you go back to what Jesse Ventura was saying when he was, I think he was either running for governor of Minnesota or he was actually governor of Minnesota when he said this. But you compared it to professional wrestling, where they pretend to hate each other when the cameras are rolling, but once those cameras are off, they're hanging out at the same social clubs and bars and restaurants, and it really is a show for the public.
Yeah, that's true. I agree.
But unlike the majority of Republicans, a certain power behind the U.S. imperial throne does not understand how government works. Because we've got some really I'm trying to put this into context here, because this is just so screwed up. So this is from a Zeneb Day responding to something that Muskrat tweeted. Tom Fitton posted, judicial coup, Biden judge orders Donald Trump to admit refugees into the United States. Muskrat's response an hour after that was, what is the point of having democratic elections if unelected activist judges, in which he puts in quotes, can override the clear will of the people? And Zeneb Day's response to this was, I know he knows that Congress makes laws, the executive executes those laws, and the judicial evaluates if executive actions overstep. He knows there's separation of powers. It's one of the constitutional duties of the judicial branch. This is all gaslighting. And ordinarily, I would be inclined to agree. But here's where I have a problem. Muskrat repeatedly demonstrates complete ignorance of any given topic. For example, coding. There was something to do with the way the Social Security Administration uses its code to keep records. Apparently, it's something called COBOL, which is spelled COBOL, which I forget what it's an acronym for, but it's an incredibly ancient computer database that was just kind of like built up over time as the technology changed, because apparently just getting rid of that new code. It's like they couldn't afford to just keep trying to transfer records from the old software and coding all the way to the new one. It was just easier just to kind of like start with the old stuff and then just kind of build up on there. But one of the reasons why they maintain redundancy with regards to certain social security numbers and why year of birth looks a little bit funny on the screen has to do with the way that code is written. And
Yeah.
like part of the reason for having duplicate files is to kind of weed out fraud. Like, let's say you've got someone who passed away, but the spouse is collecting benefits. Well, you wouldn't want to just get rid of that social security number because someone's still collecting on it legally. I mean, this is a legal thing. Like, if you're collecting social security, you pass away, but you still got money that you're entitled to in that, while your spouse or your heir or whoever gets that remaining money. So it's not just being like, and the reason for that is so that your widow or your widower isn't left completely out in the cold by losing half the household income. All right, so it actually makes sense to have some of this happen. But Muskrat, in his frequent crybaby whining posts, was like, he thinks he's playing a gotcha, but then, what happens? He just betrays that he doesn't know anything about coding or engineering. And so people who actually know this stuff were basically taking him to school. And in fact, he actually got into it with some astronauts, like people who actually know what the fuck they're talking about, was saying, oh, we could have gotten the astronauts down from the International Space Station months ago, but the government blocked SpaceX from doing it. And because politics, whatever. And the astronauts were actually telling him, no, they were actually scheduled to come back on a later flight, and this is what's happening. So it turned out to be nothing but pure politics. We're not in the way that Muskrat thinks, because all they had to do is just reschedule for another flight. But see, Muskrat gets a lot of government contracts to use SpaceX craft through NASA. So NASA no longer actually produces spacecraft. It's been gutted as an agency, so it has to rely on private contractors like SpaceX in order to get things up off the ground and into orbit. Well, Muskrat can't even build rockets that don't explode on liftoff or landing or during the initial launch, because he doesn't know shit about engineering. So that might just be one reason why those astronauts are stuck there. It's because you can't get a working rocket up there.
My God. It's so embarrassing, man. It's embarrassing to think that
So
this guy
I can
power.
fully believe that Muskrat doesn't understand how the government is actually set up. He's never actually read the Constitution, doesn't know anything about checks and balances. He really does think all the United States presidency is a dictatorship. No. Shit still has to go through Congress. All right. And that's why a lot of these executive orders are getting overturned in the judiciary. It has nothing to do with any ideological differences between the judiciary and the executive branch. Okay. A lot of these are Trump appointed judges, Biden appointed judges, Bush Cheney appointed judges. All right. They're all on board with Trump ideologically. So they actually agree with a lot of this shit. But what they're saying is it took an act of Congress to create a lot of these departments, and Congress has the power of the purse. That is what you have to go through in order to eliminate these departments and cut funding. You cannot simply write an executive order and boom, that's it.
Yeah. I think he thinks because since he bought Trump, he thinks he could go in there and just rip apart the whole government system. You see what I'm saying? But yeah. He ain't gonna learn. He ain't gonna learn.
Yeah, and it really it really pisses me off, because a lot of these Doge staffers apparently are even pushing back. According to Huffington Post, Doge staffers resign after being asked to dismantle critical public services. Now, if you've been reading in the news, that there have been positions eliminated at the FDA, the CDC, the Department of Energy, which are actually kind of critical for national security. For example, people who are in charge of the nuclear weapon security facilities or something to that effect. But a lot of these people, they're in a panic to try and hire back, but they're having trouble doing it because they already locked these people out of their emails. And I can't help but think, well, don't they have like private emails or telephone numbers on file where you can get a hold of them if they're, if they're not able to get into their public email addresses, or is it like a national security thing where you're not allowed to contact through private emails or something? But a lot of these Doge staffers apparently are being asked to dismantle critical government services. And it says more than 20 civil service employees resigned Tuesday from billionaire Trump advisor Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, saying they were refusing to use their technical expertise to dismantle critical public services. And they're coming from companies like Google and Amazon, so they're no friends of these government services. And it says, we sort of serve the American people and uphold our oath to the Constitution across presidential administrations, the 21 staffers wrote in a joint resignation letter, a copy of which was obtained by the Associated Press. However, it has become clear that we can no longer honor these commitments. The employees also warned that many of those enlisted by Muskrat to help him slash the size of the federal government under Caligula Drumm's administration were political ideologues who did not have the necessary skills or experience for the task ahead of them. The mass resignation of engineers, data scientists, and product managers is a temporary setback for Muskrat and the Republican dictator's tech-driven purge of the federal workforce. It comes amid a flurry of court challenges that have sought to stall, stop, or unwind their efforts to fire or coerce thousands of government workers out of jobs. The staffers who resigned worked for what was once known as the United States Digital Service, an office established during Barry Obama's regime after the botched rollout of healthcare.gov, the web portal that millions of Americans use to sign up for insurance plans through the Democrats' signature healthcare law. Well, it's actually not the Democrats. It's actually Mitt Romney's signature healthcare law. Obama just got it passed on the federal level. So then it goes on to say all had previously held senior roles at such tech companies as Google and Amazon, and wrote in their resignation letter that they joined the government out of a sense of duty to public service. I'm going to call bullshit on that, considering the companies they came from. No, they're in it for their own reasons. It's got nothing to do with public service.
No.
But Trump's empowerment of Muskrat upended that. After the inauguration, the staffers wrote they were called into a series of interviews that foreshadowed the secretive and disruptive work of Muskrat's Department of Government Efficiency, or Doge, or Doge, because the G is a hard G, so it's like Doge. It's kind of like with GIF, okay? It's not pronounced GIF. Yeah. It's pronounced GIF, okay? It's graphics interchange format, not graphics interchange format.
Yeah.
So fuck you, people who say GIF. It's not a peanut butter. Damn it. So we're talking like really a lot of people resigning in protest because they're not able to really push back. I mean, who are you going to go to? I mean, Trump obviously is not in charge of his own regime. My live stream last night detailed how Muskrat's a 4-year-old who has an unpronounceable name because Muskrat thought he would be clever. It's like, have you ever read Catch-22 by Joseph Heller? It's a really awesome book written during the Vietnam War, set during the Second World War. But there's a character in there named Major. He's an United States Army major. But you see, when he was, his father's last name was Major, and his mother died in childbirth. And for some reason, his father decided, I'm going to play a joke on this baby, this infant son who just killed my wife. I'm going to name him Major, Major, Major. So imagine going through life with that name,
Oh my
and then
God.
you're enlisted into the United States Army to go over to fight World War II.
Right.
Well, some army clerk decides, you know what? I'm going to have some fun with this guy. I'm going to process him so that he automatically gets the position of major. He's not even a private. He doesn't go to sergeant. He doesn't become lieutenant or captain or anything. No, we're just going to put him straight to major. Because it's not enough to have triple major. No, you've got to have quadruple major. So I guarantee you, Elon Muskrat, who doesn't actually read, by the way, but he thought it would be clever to give his son a really bullshit, unpronounceable name, much like how Prince changed his name back in the 90s to a symbol.
Yeah.
And it's done out of pure cruelty. All right. Muskrat never
Yeah.
does anything out of good nature. Okay. He did it purely to be cruel to this kid. All right. Because this kid's going to go through life with an unpronounceable name and people making fun of him for the rest of his days to the point where he suffers a psychotic breakdown. Okay. But
Yeah.
the way that Muskrat talks in front of his brat. All right, I want you to pay attention to this because if you've seen the movie adaptation of Stephen King's Pet Sematary, you know that little boy who gets run over and killed by a truck, and his father buries him in this cursed Indian burial ground that was discontinued use by the indigenous Americans because the ground had become cursed. So anything buried in there comes back to life, but it's dark and twisted. I mean, it's not exactly a vampire or a zombie or even necessarily a ghoul. It's just like some dark, malevolent force possessed the corpse, reanimated it, and it's just like homicidal now, ridiculously violent. And so the little boy gets reanimated and predictably goes on a killing spree, murders his mom, murders the next door neighbor who tries to stop him. And he's like giggling like a little psychopath throughout. It's a very good film, by the way. 1989 stars Daryl Midkiff, Denise Crosby, and Fred Gwynn in one of his final film roles. But listening to this kid talk to Tucker Carlson, Bowtie Boy, listening to Muskrat and his little brat on his lap, and he's giggling like a little psychopath. That's what he reminded me of in that interview with Tucker Carlson before the election. And so, a few weeks ago, Muskrat and his brat were in the Oval Office with Caligula Drumpf. Drumpf is at the executive desk, as he should be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The brat is telling him to shut up. It's like, you're not the president. You're not supposed to be here.
I wonder where he got that from.
Yeah, it's because he heard it from his sperm donor.
Yes.
And Drumpf, being the complete cuck that he is, has not yet fired Musk.
Yeah.
Which tells you all that you need to know about where Caligula Drumpf's balls really are. They're not in Putin's back pocket. No, they're on Elon Muskrat's back pocket, all right? Elon Muskrat is dangling Caligula Drumpf's balls from his ears as earrings.
Great.
And Drumpf has just no authority. I mean, we already went through 4 years of genocide Joe Biden, the senile kitty groper, not in charge of his own regime for 4 whole years. It's Anthony Blinken and Jake Sullivan and Victoria Nuland and all those people running the show. It's not Joe Biden. It's not even Holocaust terrorists.
Yeah.
And she's just as incapable of speaking without the aid of a teleprompter as Joe Biden is.
Or look drunk.
Or drunk. So we just came out of 4 years of a chief executive who is not actually in charge of his own regime, and that has not changed. We still have a chief executive who is not in charge of his own regime.
Yeah. I think no president, going back a long time, have been charged their own regime, though. Mike, what you think? That's how I feel.
Well, arguably, the last one to be in charge of his own regime was Barry Obama.
Yeah. Yeah. Not surprising.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I can see that.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
Muskrat last week sent an email out, and I'm reporting here from BBC News, which yeah, it's reporting on this. So, U.S. Departments within the Trump regime have told staff not to comply with a Saturday email from Muskrat's cost-cutting initiative asking what they accomplished in the past week. Now, this is a rather familiar corporate ploy, uh, basically designed to do nothing but force employees to try and justify their jobs to management so that they can either avoid getting fired or get themselves fired if they can't answer to satisfaction. Of course, it's a trap because you're not actually meant to be able to answer to management's satisfaction. It's a way of management finding an excuse to terminate you. And Muskrat's email was very specific. Refusal to comply will be taken as resignation so that the government doesn't have to pay out unemployment benefits. Now, yeah, so the FBI, the State Department, and the Pentagon, according to BBC News, were among agencies that instructed employees not to answer the message. Other department heads advised staff to comply, while some told workers to wait for further guidance before responding. Muskrat said failure to respond by Monday at midnight would be interpreted as the employee resigning. Caligula Trump has yet to comment on the email. The conflicting guidance caused confusion for hundreds of thousands of government bureaucrats as Muskrat's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, task force leads an outside effort to aggressively reduce government spending. The message sent to millions of federal employees on Saturday evening came after Muskrat posted on his social media platform Twitter that government staff would shortly receive an email requesting to understand what they got done last week. In a copy of the email obtained by the BBC, employees were asked to respond by explaining their accomplishments from the past week in 5 bullet points without disclosing classified information. So the Office of Personnel Management, the federal government's human resources agency, confirmed the email was authentic. The message did not mention whether declining to comply could affect employment status, despite Musk's social media assertion that failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. So this is Muskrat really pulling his usual corporate bullshit, where he's saying, okay, you have to justify why you're still here, and if you can't, then you're gone.
Yeah.
A typical corporate tactic, but he's trying to do it with the government. And the problem is, as we saw with the Department of Energy, the FDA, and the CDC and other agencies, well, first of all, his ability to actually do this is highly suspect, all right? A lot of this requires acts of Congress. Now, it is true that the chief executive does have certain authority to hire and fire people, but these are actually not elected officials. They are part of an apparatus that actually is larger than the office of the presidency. So even though technically he can hire and fire cabinet members, for example, you can demand, okay, you disappoint me, Gabbard, because you're not doing what I want as an NSA chief. So, you're gone. Or let's say John Bolton, because he's got that Bolton mustache. I just simply call him the mustache.
Yeah,
because the moment you talk back to him, he'll get like this unholy aura around him, and that mustache will start defying gravity, and and those eyes will start glowing like something out of an H.P. Lovecraft novel, and he'll start going all exorcist on your ass. Even he was not immune to getting shit canned by Caligula Trump once Trump realized that Bolton was just using him to further his own ends. So, the first regime under Caligula Trump was marked by very short time spans for cabinet picks, but so technically, the chief executive can nominate someone, and the Senate has to confirm that person, and the chief executive can then go ahead and decide, whether that person stays or goes. But then, he has to nominate someone else and get approval from the Senate. So, there are checks and balances here that unfortunately are not being honored because the House of Representatives is not doing its job of oversight. It's supposed to be the one controlling the power of the purse, and then also has the power impeachment. Now, if I were the Speaker of the House and Trump started doing this flurry of executive orders that overstep the boundaries of the executive branch, I would be the first one bringing in articles of impeachment saying that the guy occupying the Oval Office is violating the Constitution and violating the law by seizing powers that are normally designated to Congress. So, that would be my first act. But that's not what is happening, because unlike his first regime, where we had John Boehner and then Paul Ryan as the House Speaker, now you've got a situation where Mike Johnson, who is a Caligula Jump creature, is in charge of the House, and he is like, nope, no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to go ahead and start cutting Medicaid. Because that's what's actually happening. They just voted to cut $800 billion from Medicaid. So this is from today, actually. So the Republican House budget resolution would cost congressional districts an average of $2 billion each and could eliminate coverage for 159 million people. So Medicaid and the Children's Health Insurance Program, or CHIP, cover essential life-saving health care for nearly 1 in 4 Americans. This is according to Center for American Progress, including low-income individuals and families, pregnant women, seniors, and people with disabilities. For the nearly 80 million people covered by Medicaid or CHIP, those programs mean being able to see a doctor when they're sick, obtain the medication that they need, or afford home-based care or nursing home services near the end of life. All right, so my Medicaid coverage actually just got cut off recently, so I cannot get a renewal on my asthma inhalers or go get dental care.
Wow.
Yeah, so
my mom on Medicaid
this
too.
this is something that affects me personally, and I didn't even vote for the motherfucker. So, but yeah, so the House budget resolution currently under consideration instructs the House Energy and Commerce Committee to cut at least $880 billion in costs through 2034. Based on previous proposals from House Budget Committee Republican leadership, these cuts are widely anticipated to come from the Medicaid program. All states rely on federal matching funds to finance their state Medicaid and CHIP programs. A new analysis from the Center for American Progress explores the potential reach of these cuts by congressional district. And then it gives a table below that explains, how all these funds are allocated and what this would actually mean for people who receive public assistance. Because what ends up happening is you cut these programs, and all of a sudden people can't afford to go to the doctor, who otherwise would have their medical treatment covered. And of course, SNAP benefits are being cut as well. So you're cutting SNAP benefits and Medicaid at a time when people are desperate. And that is going to cause a huge increase in crime, because desperate people are going to do desperate things, not all of them legal. So, this is Caligula Drumpf making good on his promises to his donors, especially to Muskrat, who wants all that money for himself. Muskrat has huge conflicts of interest going on with all sorts of agencies, like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is toothless and defanged as it was by the time Trump got in there again back in January. It actually did do some good, but a lot of these, along with the National Labor Review Board, NASA, and also there's a lot of companies like, say, like the SEC, for example. All these agencies were basically looking into Muskrat's activities because he's getting government subsidies and he's producing shit. And so there's all sorts of violations, like labor violations, discrimination law violations, all sorts of stuff that he was under investigation for, and now all that's being dropped. But Muskrat is cutting funding to the agencies that are supposed to be overseeing his businesses.
Exactly.
So, this is pretty naked corruption that is just being done right out in the open. There's not even the pretense of being on the up and up with this. I mean, at least with the Biden regime, as horribly corrupt as that was, there was still the necessary plausible deniability where you could actually gaslight people into saying, no, this isn't happening. You don't understand how things work or whatever. Well, Muskrat is just not even bothering with the pretense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
He's
Trump, who
laying it
has no
all out.
filter either, is just saying like, okay, we're just going to cut these because they're infringing too much on what we're trying to do here with our businesses. So it's like, yeah, you wonder why the establishment doesn't like Trump. It's because he keeps saying the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
And the legitimacy of the system relies on being able to give the perception of decorum.
Yeah.
And Trump doesn't care about decorum.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
But even running the United States from behind the imperial throne is not enough for Muskrat. No, he's been trying to interfere in Germany.
Oh, I heard about that. Of course.
Yeah, it's really, it really is just completely messed up because when Germany had its elections on Sunday, this was a snap election. It actually was not supposed to happen at this time. Former German Chancellor Olaf Scholz was facing a no confidence vote and so decided to hold a snap election as a last ditch effort to try and salvage his political party's hold on power. And that failed spectacularly. So the Social Democratic Party, or SPD, came in third place with 16.4% of the vote. The Christian Democratic Union and Christian Democratic Union, I believe it's called. Let's see. CDU, which is called. Yeah, it is in here somewhere, but yeah, its acronym is CDU. That actually got first place with 28.6% of the vote. And the fascist AFD, or Alternative for Germany, came in with 20.8% of the vote. Now, the Greens held on with 11.6% of the vote. So probably what's going to end up happening is the CDU is likely to form a governing coalition with the SPD and possibly the Greens as well. But this is going to be a rather fragile coalition. In fact, one of the other governing parties actually quit the government, which is another reason for the snap election, because of the way that Scholz has been running the country into the ground and his handling of the war in Ukraine and all this. So, the coalition fell apart and there was a vote of no confidence coming up. So now you've got the CDU coming in with not quite enough to form a majority government, because you have to actually, in a parliamentary system, you have to get at least 30% of the vote in order to form a governing body that can shut out all the other parties. So if you get under 30%, then you have to form a coalition with the other parties in order to try. So in this case, they're probably going to, in order to maintain the status quo, they'll probably enter a ruling coalition with the SPD and the Greens, since together they're about on par to counteract anything that the AFD might do. Now, AFD, if you're not familiar with that, they're incredibly fascist, very nationalist, Germany for Germans, very anti-Muslim, anti-gay, anti-labor, shades of Nazi Germany in a lot of their rhetoric, but they came in second place. So in order to hold off on allowing them into the government, they're going to try and form a government with SPD probably, and then the Greens. Now, interestingly enough, the left party, or Die Linke, as it's called in German, they came in with almost 9% of the vote. So they won't have very many seats in this coalition, but they will have some seats in there. Like the Free Democratic Party, which I believe is what that was the faction that actually walked away and helped contribute to the snap election. They lost big time. All right, if you don't get 5% or more in the German elections, you don't get to be part of the government. So you've got at least 5 parties here. So you've got the CDU, CSU, which is the Christian party, very conservative. Then you've got the Social Democratic Party, the Greens. So that's 3, and they'll probably form the ruling coalition. Then you've got the fascist AFD, which is second place. It has the second largest number of seats in the upcoming parliament. And then you've got the Left Party, which is the smallest, but not insignificant. So what could happen, though, and if the Greens are smart, and I don't think they are, but if the Greens are smart, they will probably reach out to the Left Party in order to try and gain more leverage politically.
Like coalesce, like combine, or
because you've got like something like 11 almost 12% of the vote, and then you've got so 12% plus almost 9%. That together they would have something like almost 19% of the vote, which would actually put it into third place if they were to join together. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
That's
so
how you build it.
yeah, because in parliamentary systems, the United States is not a parliamentary system, although it could be. Because if you had 3 or more major political parties, and they all win in Congress, and you're going to have to see like a governing caucus that has like say the Democrats joining up with like the Greens or the Progressives. Let's say either of those gets a significant number of seats. Or let's say the Libertarian Party, or as I call it, the Libertarian Party, let's say they win big. And then you would expect them to join forces with the Republicans because they're all about big business. So, well, the Democrats are all about big business too, but they at least throw a bone to minority groups for pandering, even though they never actually deliver on any of their promises to those minority groups. So, but so. So that's what actually would happen if we here in the United States had more than one major political party within Congress. So in Europe and also in Asia, you've got parliamentary governments where very routinely, because of the number of parties, no one can gain enough of a percentage of the vote to actually form a government, and so you have to form these coalitions over there. So right now, this looks really less like an upset in the German elections and more like a shell game where you just kind of like it's akin to rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah.
So instead of the Social Democrats being in charge, now you've got the Christian faction, which is very conservative, but Social Democrats are also very conservative. I mean, they pretend to be liberal, but they're very much like the Democrats over here in the United States. So they're very deeply conservative, and again, they throw a nominal bone. People like to attack Russia as being very anti-LGBTQIA, which is true, but then so is Germany. So is Poland. So is the United Kingdom. So is Ukraine. So so is pretty much most of NATO. They're all anti-trans, anti-LGBTQIA. All right.
Exactly.
So why are so many conservatives saying that Europe is this degenerate continent that allows gays and is trying to trans your kids? It's not because Europe is actually trying to trans your kids. Okay, Poland has entire areas where it's actually illegal for LGBTQIA people to be there in public. All right. And Donald Tusk, who's the prime minister in Poland, as far as I know, he hasn't really done much, if anything, to actually address that since he came to power. So, so that's the dynamic over there. But, their thinking is, because that group is merely tolerated, in Europe and allowed to exist, albeit as second-class citizens, instead of being completely wiped off the face of the earth, that's held up as an example of Europe's supposed degeneracy, and it's really not. It's degenerate for entirely different reasons, having to do with being extremely right-wing and dismantling social safety nets and increasing poverty and homelessness and oppressing Muslims and people of color and other minority groups. It's degenerate in that respect. So Germany really is trying to remain relevant in Europe after the 2000s and the fall of the Soviet Union. The UK really became an appendage of the United States. It's really not relevant anymore. So now you've got kind of like this soft power competition between France and Germany, where Germany is basically was really the economic powerhouse of Europe until a few years ago. And then you've got the United Kingdom, where basically outside of Switzerland, that's where all the banking and finance stuff goes on. And then Germany was the economic and manufacturing powerhouse. Not anymore. So Germany is basically trying to hold on to its last remaining shreds of relevancy within the industrial and economic sphere of Europe. And it's not going to last. The war in Ukraine has basically exhausted Europe. It's got no more weapons left to give. It really has no soldiers it can send into, because the moment they go in there, well, what are they going to fight with?
Yes. I guess. He ain't gonna win.
Yeah.
He's going far. So.
Yeah, because it all got used up on the battlefield in Ukraine or got sent to the black market, where it was used to overthrow the Syrian government. So this shit is really fucked up. But here's a thing that Holly Blomberg was pointing out yesterday, and that is that the head of the CDU is the former head of BlackRock Germany division. That would be Friedrich Merz. And then the far-right party of the former Goldman Sachs banker Alice Weidel won 20.8%. So AfD is the fascist party in Germany. Alice Weidel was a former banker at Goldman Sachs. So, again, these are corporate executives who are basically just cutting out the middleman and now going straight for the proverbial office, like directly running for the presidency, much like Caligula Trump did in 2016. Because before, Trump was just financing the Clintons, and then he decided, well, why am I paying them when I could just run for president myself and use that to rebuild my fortunes? Because he's a slumlord and he's not nearly as good at business as he likes to pretend he is. So that's why he declared like Chapter 11 bankruptcy a whole bunch of times.
Exactly.
Yeah, and Muskrat threw a whole bunch of money at his campaign, which is why he now answers to Elon Muskrat.
Yep, but they said money
and,
talk.
And why Muskrat's 4-year-old with the unpronounceable name is able to get away with telling Trump to shut up and that he's not the president and then he needs to go away.
Trump didn't do shit. He's folding like a lunch here.
4 years of this shit. Yeah. We've got 4 years of this shit.
Every day it's something
new.
So
Trump is owned by Elon Muskrat, and then couch fucker Vance is owned by Peter Thiel.
Yeah. Oh my God, man.
The guy who was like stammering and stuttering, trying to figure out what he was going to say in response to Luigi Mangione being so popular, believed to be the guy who shot Brian Thompson, who is the CEO of United Healthcare and a mass murderer, denying people's health coverage left and right just because he could.
Yeah.
And somebody shoots him, and there's a lot of questions over whether Mangione actually did it or not. I don't know that he's the actual shooter, just based on the photos. First of all, their clothes are different. Now, that doesn't preclude the shooter from changing out of those clothes. I mean, the backpack was found in Central Park, so presumably, he changed his clothes and left. But the McDonald's at which Mangione was caught, apparently, it's being reported now through his lawyer that not only did the cops not do a proper search, but they were going through his bag in secret, meaning there was no one observing them. So, I think the defense can make a credible argument.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's accepted by the judge or jury is still up for debate. But, the argument could be made that the cops planted evidence on Mangione, and that between the grainy footage and still screen captures from the security cameras and the violations of due process, he could get acquitted on that, or at least a hung jury where they would have to try him again. But honestly, I think the shooter probably got away, and the cops needed a face to prosecute. He was there. He looked enough like the shooter, so they had the evidence with them and probably planted it on him.
Exactly. That's why I believe.
Because really,
likely.
because really, unless you want to be caught, who's stupid enough to carry your manifesto, the murder weapon, and the clothes that you use to commit the crime, and a McDonald's where you're on camera and you're using, allegedly, you're using the same debit card as a shooter? But only someone who wants to get caught is that fundamentally stupid.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. I believe he'll get off, man. Like, I think he got some good damn lawyers too. They finding
Let's hope so,
more and more.
because otherwise, but yeah, the system really needs this guy to be convicted, and you can tell because they're not actually even reporting on him. Because when they were reporting about him, public sentiment was in his favor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, both political parties are scared shitless. The CEO class scared shitless.
Yeah, CEOs taking their portfolios off off their websites and shit.
And I think I think realizing that having Mangione up on television was basically just encouraging more potential shooters, because public sympathy would be for the defendant, not the prosecution.
Exactly.
And they couldn't have that, so they basically stopped reporting on it, which is why I think they're trying to convict him quietly. And who knows if it'll work. It'll be interesting to follow that trial once it gets started.
I'm definitely gonna follow that trial on my shows. One last question I got for you, Bear. Like, why do you think MSNBC fired Joy Reid?
I think it's because they're basically cutting out as many establishment Democrat voices as they can. I mean, supposedly the pretense was that she was mildly critical of Israel a couple of times during the coverage last year, but I mean, she was mostly just running interference for the Biden-Harris regime, and I mean, she's a typical right-wing sellout. Part and parcel of the Democrat apparatus. But the thing is, though, the Democrats suffered a major blowout last year. Right now, the major networks, MSDNC, Clinton Noise Network, Reuters, all those establishment outlets, Washington Fence Post, the New Pork Times, they're all lining up to kiss Caligula Trump's ass in one way or another, because they're expecting a bunch of payback. Even Mark Zuckerberg over at Meta is like, yeah, we're just not going to bother fact checking anymore, and we're removing all protections for LGBTQIA, and Google is removing Pride Month and Black History Month from its website, Because like it used to be like during a given month, you'd say like a Black History Month, where it would have a different graphic throughout the entire month when you go to Google, and
Yeah,
that's not happening.
yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, Google
and
calendars.
then I expect, and then Target is ending its diversity program and already caved into the anti-LGBTQIA bigots by no longer carrying stuff geared that community. So, all the corporations are now feeling brave enough to drop all the pretenses that they gave it to him.
Yeah, 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 totally, man. Yeah, it's wild. That's wild. It's wild out here, man. Um, yeah. Okay. Mike. This is episode 4 of the A&M podcast. As you can tell, I'm more energetic than I was the last time. Just been
Yeah, a
going
lot
through
of stuff
stuff,
going
but
around right now. Not just COVID,
yeah,
but H5N1 flu, other strains of flu, and apparently now there's another.
norovirus.
Another coronavirus being detected in Japan that may be a recombinant one, because that's what viruses do. I mean, people stop mitigation; they keep spreading the virus. Well, eventually, going
Yeah,
to run into another closely related one that can merge. And because for all people keep pushing the lab leak lie, there's no evidence whatsoever for that. There never has been, although they keep pushing it. But SARS-CoV-2 is widely believed to have combined in a host animal in the Wuhan province in the wet market. It happens. I mean, Spanish flu is believed to have originated on a military hog farm in Kansas, where we brought it to Europe when we entered the First World War, and that's basically what ended it early, because they didn't have enough healthy bodies left to throw at the war effort. And a lot of people are trying to minimize the 1918 pandemic, but that did start right here in the United States, and it was only called the Spanish flu because Spain at that time was not involved in the war and was the only country really widely reporting about it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, man. I
But
always tell
this
people.
happens because when humans are in close contact over an extended period of time with animals, well, viruses do tend to mutate, and especially animals that are like pigs or birds, where there's a lot of contact where closely related viruses are going to combine in a host animal and mutate into a whole new one. If you merge one that can leap to humans, it's going to happen.
Yeah,
So, yeah, we might be looking at SARS-3 soon, on
yeah,
top of H5N1 and SARS-2 and tuberculosis, measles, smallpox,
norovirus.
HPV derived cancers.
Damn. Yeah.
And the guy in charge of Health and Human Services is an anti-vaxxer.
Yeah, and he's trying to get rid of the COVID vaccine. By the way, I heard.
The death toll is going to be catastrophic and undeniable.
Oh God, man. Yeah. That's why I would tell people, you gotta protect yourself. Wear a mask.
Yeah,
N95.
if bird flu mutates to human transmission, that's it. We're fucked.
Yeah, we fucked. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, you've even got a lot of leftists and so-called communists who are like, it's tyranny to force vaccines and mitigations on it. Dude, you talk like a fucking libertarian. It's like I was in a Twitter group
Crazy.
chat, Communist Red Couch or something like that, or whatever, and it's like I don't
Yeah.
know why I got invited to it, because I don't necessarily identify as a communist. I mean, I sympathize with them, but my politics are not such that I would identify as one. I've never read Marx or
Yeah.
Engels. I don't know theory. I just know history. Okay, so and
Yeah.
my politics are closer to New Deal liberal, progressive socialist, communist. But for somehow I keep getting invited to these chats. But one of them,
Yeah.
there are a couple of
Me
them where it's
too.
like, yeah, we're just going to spew COVIDiot anti-vaxxer talking points. It's like, okay, feds.
Yeah. Ops. Yeah.
But they got in a hissy fit and left because I refused to stop posting stuff debunking their endless bullshit. So it's like, fine, whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's actually
Yeah.
why Liz added me to those groups, because she knew I'm a heavy hitter when it comes
You
to
are.
owning people on the internet. Well, I learned from the best. Okay, go look at H Bomber Guy.
Yeah. Oh
All
yeah.
right, he took
One
apart
of the
Paul
best.
Joseph Watson and the Golden One and all these other right wing fascists. Yeah, if look up H Bomber Guy and the Soy Boys, a measured response.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's just absolutely brutal, and the voice
Yeah.
that he uses, it's very soft spoken, kind of soothing, while he's gutting you like a fish. It's like, sit back and let me open you up like a pig.
He's amazing.
Yeah,
Um.
but he also did a nearly 2 hour long video explaining why Sherlock is absolute garbage as a TV show, which also had a lot to do with Doctor Who, because Stephen Moffat at the time was running both Doctor Who and Sherlock, and he just went into like this entire almost 2 hour long video explaining all the shortcomings that Stephen Moffat has as a writer, primarily caused by his massive ego that causes him to drop the ball on both shows. Yeah, he is awesome. He is awesome like that.
Yeah.
He's also in Britain,
Yeah.
so he's British.
That's dope. Before we go, I'm gonna share your GoFundMe. In case some of you guys don't know, Mike, he want to go overseas and teach the students English. So this is his GoFundMe. The link to his GoFundMe is in the description below this video if you're on YouTube and Rumble. So check it out. And if you're on Twitter, I will tweet the links too as well.
Yeah, and I've actually paid for the TEFL course out of my own pocket. So this is right now it's trying to recoup my losses
Yeah, yeah,
so that I can
yeah.
get that back. I haven't gotten any donations since really since the early part of this month, like first week of February. So yeah, if you could please donate there, that would be really appreciated.
Yes.
But yeah, I am increasingly looking to teaching overseas, because at this point, trying to get a job in America that lasts any longer than a few months or a year is almost impossible for a lot of
That's
people.
true.
And with the
Yeah,
anti-education fever over here, it just would be better if I taught overseas as opposed to trying to teach over here, where they're actually firing teachers and professors and entire faculty and staff simply because they protest a genocide. So no, I'm going to try and see if I can go overseas and teach over there.
yeah, yeah. So again, guys, that's the link. I mean, the link is in the description. Yep, support Mike. Anything helps. It goes a long way. So, okay. Any last thoughts, Mike, before we head out?
Yes, good night and good luck.
I appreciate it, man. Same to you. All right, guys. That wraps up episode 4 of the A&M podcast on the ACP network. And also, too, we have our own secret channel, the A&M podcast on YouTube. Check that out as well. Okay, Mike. See you next week.
All right, see ya.
All right.